Hi, welcome to George Orwell's 1984 discussion with Gwen, Maddie, Emily F, Emily K. Go for it, Emily K.
So, in the beginning of the novel, we are introduced to Winston Smith. He is 39 years old and he lives in Oceania, which is England. He owns an apartment. And so, where he lives, there are 4 ministries: the Ministry of Truth, Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Love, and Ministry of Plenty. So Winston, he bought a journal and then he starts to write on it, which is against the thought police, so he could get in trouble for that. And then he writes about this day, and during that, the 2 minutes hate occurred, which is propaganda against Emmanuel Goldstein. People basically act crazy during that. So Big Brother is in charge of the totalitarian government, and he has 3 slogans: war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. So Winston repeatedly writes down with Big Brother in his journal. So Winston helps Mrs. Parson with her sink, and he sees how brainwashed her kids are. Winston remembers his own parents and sisters and how they were sacrificed. He thinks about the ongoing wars with Eurasia and East Asia. He thinks about how the party has changed history. Literally, they rewrite history in order to keep up with what Big Brother is saying. And he is exercising while thinking about this. At work, his job is to rectify news articles to fit what actually happened. So, for instance, he makes up a man in Big Brother's speech. He eats food with specialists in Newspeak. So his job is to get rid of words for a new dictionary, so that way rebellion won't be possible because there won't be the words necessary. Winston thinks about how he's and others will soon be vaporized because they're too smart. Parson brags about his kids, and then Winston is worried that the girl he keeps on seeing might be part of the thought police. Winston writes in his journal an account with a pro prostitute. He was married but never going to have children, so they separated, and he wants to have a sexual affair to be rebellious. Proles are the only hope for rebellion, but it's not very likely just because they're not well organized, even though they make up 85% of the population. Winston looks at the children's history book and he thinks about what is written and what actually happened is very different because Big Brother and the government has rewritten history entirely. So Winston knows that the party has lied. There were 3 men who were part of Big Brother's party, and they were accused of committing treason in Eurasia. But Winston had a photograph of when they were in New York at the time they were accused of being in Eurasia, but he destroys the photograph because that's part of his job. And then Winston thinks of O'Brien, a colleague who also hates the party, and then he thinks about true freedom is being able to tell what actually happened and what reality is. And that's when it ended.
We will start out by discussing the character of the story, and the character we'll be focusing on is Winston. So, what was the character's ethos?
Well, obviously he's telling his own story, which gives him ethos to his own story because he's living through it at the moment. And there's also, he's also in a high position in society, like he's given a trusted job where like he's chosen to rewrite history. And obviously if he would tell anyone about that, that would be extremely bad and he would probably die. So yeah, it's part of his ethos.
I also feel like he has more ethos than anyone who almost doesn't have his job because he knows what actually happened in history. Yeah. Because he's the one physically rewriting a lot of it.
Yeah, especially because of his job. Like, if he was a pro, I don't think he would much ethos at all, just because they don't have really any intelligence, and Big Brother and the government, they don't consider pros to be worth anything. And because of his job, he has access to things. He knows that Big Brother has lied before, and he has to live with that daily.
He also has to daily think about things, and he's not just living through life. He's constantly thinking about it, versus other people just go through it and live through it.
Yeah,
and
he's constantly committing thought crime.
Yeah,
and he knows that he could die for it. He knows that he will die for it. But then there was one line that he thought, now that he knows he's going to die, he has to do his best to survive. So like he knows what's going on and he's directly experiencing it. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much where his authority comes from.
Another thing is that like he was alive when like Big Brother was like just starting out, so like he kind of sort of remembers what it was like before Big Brother was in power. Like he remembers like the like early purges when like most of his family was killed or disappeared. So like he's lived through that and he like knows the difference.
Well, and how do we feel about the character?
I feel like we have pathos towards the character just because like if like if you were one of the only people in a society where you knew what was bad and knew what was going on and like you couldn't tell anyone, like you would automatically like have like pathos towards them just because you like feel for the character and you feel sorry that they're in that situation and that they can't really get out of it, and you know there's gonna have impending basically doom because what he's doing for his thought crimes.
I think it's interesting because like he's not entirely sympathetic. Like you do feel bad for him because he like is going through this, but like he has a high paying job and like it's like a weird job, like he is high paying, and then also like his like when he went with the prostitute, like normally we don't think of that, like we like, oh, characters like they wouldn't like go to prostitutes and stuff, so like that shows like a different side of him and showing like he's not perfect.
He also like is like constantly being watched by like the big brother, and like how like even like his own like personal household, he like doesn't have like a personal space to himself where he's not being watched except for like that one corner where he has his diary. And like if you didn't have like a single place to yourself where you're not being watched except for a tiny corner, I feel like that would just suck.
It's really admirable that he's brave enough to kind of to still commit thought crime even though he knows he's going to die for it, and the fact that he's clever enough to get away with it up to this point is kind of impressive.
I also think it's cool that he like has like with how like he like doesn't like fully believe in Big Brother, and like most of the people around him they're like fully like brainwashed by him, but like he has resisted that, which I think is really admirable.
He seems to be the only character who has questions.
I mean,
I feel like
I feel
there's
like
other characters also, but
yeah, like,
he's
he talked
O'Brien.
about O'Brien.
yeah.
Who
So
he
I feel like in
thought hated.
yeah, in like
'Cause he,
future
saw
chapters
hatred
we'll
in his
know.
eyes for Big Brother.
So, what do you think motivates this character?
Well, I think knowing the past and like knowing what's going on and no one else knows what's going on, like obviously makes him different from everything else. And like I feel like if you knew something that was that extremely wrong and you were already this brave to like commit all these thought crimes, then I feel like he's going to basically do something about it. And
That makes me think, if he didn't have the job that he has, which is rewriting history, to match what the party is saying, do you think he would be having these thoughts that what they're doing is wrong? Or do you think...
I mean, I think he would, but he wouldn't have any proof. So I think he would be like, well, like, wait, like, the whole, like, ration thing. He's like, wait, like, I thought yesterday they said that we have more rations, but now they're saying, like, we have more now, but it's actually less. But I think he would, like, soon give in to, like, what everybody else was thinking.
He'd doubt himself.
Because he wouldn't have any proof. Like, he doesn't know, like, for sure that Big Brother has lied. So I think it would be, like, slightly harder for him to be brainwashed, but I still think he would be.
Yeah. So he's motivated pretty much on what he's seen and what
Yeah.
he knows, which is kind of logical. So that's the logos of his character.
I'm just, like, surprised that they, like, trust so many people to, like, have his job. Like, he talked about how there were, like, many people, and, like, many people will rewrite it, and then they, like, pick the best one. But, like, I'm surprised that they trust that many people, because, like, I feel like, like, some of them, especially with his job, they would also feel the same way that Winston does, but maybe they think they can get rid of him with the thought police, so.
Yeah.
I also feel like there's like power in numbers too, because like they could easily like instead of just entrusting this all into one person, whereas like now that person's valuable and they can't just like make him disappear when they want to. I feel like having that numbers like gives the government more power because like now you're expendable and you don't like you're not
matter as
valuable
much.
anymore. Yeah.
Like, even if they did decide to say something, who would believe them?
True.
A random person that they've never heard of before, or the government that they've been ruled by, pretty much, as long as they remember.
Plus, nobody would believe him, and he wouldn't be able to, like, get into newspapers or, like, TV or anything just because they would either rectify it if he was able to do that, or, like, they wouldn't believe him at all, or they wouldn't let him just because Big Brother has so much control.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the character discussion. Now for the setting, how does the setting affect the characters? Like, obviously, it's really the whole point of the book is that it's set in a world that's in a totalitarian government situation.
I mean, it's supposed to be the future, but you can, like,
Like it was the future at the time it was
yeah.
written. But now
And
it's
technically it's past, but you can just tell, like, by, like, the way he describes it, and you can constantly see the posters everywhere of, like, Big Brother, and, like, it's just, like, you can never forget, like, the theme that's going on in this book is just Big Brother watching over you, and, like, how it's everywhere. It's not just, like, here and there. It's like, oh, there's a poster, maybe over there. It's just, like, everywhere you go. There's every end of, like, a staircase has a poster, and, like, you would think that would get redundant walking upstairs, but no, they make sure they put it on every single level. It's just...
Yeah, it just helps add to the, like,
Yeah.
the way that he wrote it. Like, the fact that the characters experience it every day really drives home that it's an oppressive government.
like if the setting like wasn't what it was, like if there wasn't a Big Brother and the government, like there wouldn't be a story. They would just be like normal people like living lives. But like it's because of the government that Winston is like going through like this journey, which we don't really know that much about yet, but like otherwise there wouldn't be much of a story.
Yeah, they really play on, like, the pathos of, like, the people in the town, just, like, almost scare them, even though if they have no idea what's going on, there's, like, that even if they do, like, start figuring things out, there's that immediate fear of, like, what Big Brother will do to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the other characters were really interesting because aside from him and O'Brien, there's really no one who seems to be thinking the same thoughts that he is. And just the fact that I thought it was really interesting, the children, what they do with the children, like
Yeah.
the junior spies. Basically, the junior spies are kids that are kind of, I guess, trained or told to report anyone who's having thought crime, which is basically thinking anything that the party doesn't want them to think. Like
and they do it. Like
yeah,
I'm
they do
surprised.
it.
And they like portray their parents.
Yeah, and
like,
they're enthusiastic
do you
about
remember
it.
like Mrs. Parsons?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. And she
Yeah.
was scared of them. She was scared of
Yeah.
her own children because they were brainwashed enough to turn them in for having free thought, if they ever did.
Probably wasn't.
We have the Girls and Boy Scouts. They have the scarier version of Girls and Boy Scouts. They start them young, they brainwash them, and then this is what happens.
Okay, so how are time and the passage of time used by the writer? How do they affect characters' actions and readers' reactions to them? So there are a lot of flashbacks in this, and I feel like it really adds to his ethos because it again it shows his direct experiences and his thoughts in the past, and maybe see how he's evolved since then. And just the fact that some of them are really unclear, like what exactly happened to his parents and his family. And his wife and things like that.
You can tell there's, like, a lot of, like, almost not necessarily mystery because you know what happened, but, like, that, like, what extent, where will Big Brother basically stop? Like, what extent will Big Brother go to? And basically, I mean, you know that extent, but you really wish it wasn't that extent of, oppression.
I just think it's interesting, and I think the flashbacks also give him like pathos with the reader, because like you hear about him like losing his family, like his wife, and like the reader feels sorry for him. And just like I think the time setting, because like when the author wrote this book, like 1984 was like a few decades into the future, but now like when we look back on it, like that was a few decades like past, and it's interesting like that it didn't come like to fruition. And like I think the title is just like really interesting in general, because like normally when we think of like just like dystopian novels, they're like very far into the future, but like this one's like technically in our past, time setting wise.
So the plot. Describe the conflicts in the narrative. Do these arise from context, character, or both? How does the narrative invoke logos and pathos to move the story forward?
I think the conflict obviously is within Winston's head, and like whether or not he's going to go forward with this like thought crimes, and whether he's going to do something about it, or whether or not he's just going to kind of keep to himself and hope he doesn't get caught.
So they arise from both context and character. Context because he is in this setting of a totalitarian government, and then character because he knows what's going on, and he's brave enough to kind of defy it in his own way, even if no one knows about it.
I think it's really cool that he's like willing to do this like by himself. Like he doesn't know, like he knows that other people are probably unhappy, like O'Brien, but like he doesn't like have anybody else currently as like an ally, and like he's just by himself like rebelling, which I think is really brave of him, because it's like very easy to go along with the crowd, but he's like kind of standing up in his own way.
Yeah, and he's not just thinking. He went out and bought a diary, which would get him probably killed anyway.
Yeah.
Just taking physical actions
And like his sexual affair, like the party is very against like sex, but he's like, no, it's like a form of rebellion, is like enjoying sex, and yeah.